Today, I'm going to show you the 4 checks that I run before ever placing a pitcher recorded outs bet. And these 4 checks include the pitcher's efficiency, the lineup that he's facing, his last few starts, and even the bullpen behind him. 4 signals, and it's the same 4 every single time. And if you skip one, you're guessing, not betting. Because at the end of the day, you need a profitable, repeatable process that you can run every single time. So in this video, I'll be walking through all 4 right now in games that are happening today. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now on Outlier, there are multiple ways to find these bets, and you can even look at it by going to the Insights tab, which is the very first thing. And once you get here, then you can kind of look over here at the propositions, just type in outs, and then from there, you will see all these different types of props show up for whatever sportsbooks you want to bet on. Or if you wanted to go to individual games, click into these individual games and look at player props, you could do that. But hands down, my favorite way to identify these props is actually over here on this props tab. And once you get here, you will see all of these different filters that you can look at. But what I'm only going to look at for this one is just, again, the recorded outs market for all of these pitchers. Now what you have are these different filter sets. You can filter it from their hit rate over their last 5 or even their last 10, or again, even their last 20. So what we have here, all of these different pitchers going on for today, and I'm actually going to look at this Aaron Nola play because it really stands out to me. Has hit 100% over his last 5, 80% over his last 10, 70% over his last 20, but even 100% in his head-to-head matchups versus this opposing team. So let's go ahead and click into this and see what we get here. And once we get here, the very first thing that we're obviously going to see is his game log, and obviously it's a lot of green, which is good to see, but it's not the very first thing that I actually check. What I am most curious in when I am looking at these pitchers is actually how many pitches are they throwing, and you can actually see that here when you scroll down to the supporting stats and look at pitches thrown. If this pitcher is averaging 100 pitches, I generally will stay away from the under unless my other checks work out for me. But looking here at Aaron Nola, you can see that he's honestly averaging somewhere around the 90s mark. He's really only cleared 96 plus pitches in 1, 2, 3, 4 games over his last 20. But even if you look at the 2026 season, it's really been 96 plus in only 3 games this year, which is a good sign because obviously managers and teams want their starting pitchers to work deeper into games, but a lot of time these pitchers are on pitch counts, and you can see that kind of reflected here. Right before he hits 90, more times than not, he's getting yanked from the game, which is exactly why you see him working only about 5 innings pitched, which is what that 15 mark is. So with that said, it's also nice to see that we actually have this at 16.5, meaning that he can still record 1 more out in the 6th inning before he gets pulled, and we still crush the under. And now the next thing that I actually check here is obviously the pitches look good, the recent game logs look good, but I actually want to see if there's any other additional insights, and you can do that by hovering over this little light bulb button, and you can see here that Nola has failed to exceed 17.5 outs in 7 straight games at home. So if we click that, obviously we were looking at the 16.5, but even at 17.5, he hasn't even cleared this in his last 7 home games. So obviously another positive sign to be taking this under, but again, let's look at the head-to-head. We saw that he had a 100% hit rate in his head-to-head games, and you can actually see here he had this head-to-head versus the Pirates earlier this season where he only had 11 outs. Didn't even work 4 full innings of work. And you can see that here with 3.2 innings pitched and 80 pitches thrown in that short span. So that's obviously a really good sign. So this basically is past my first check where I want to make sure that he's not necessarily throwing a ton of pitches where it can kind of screw me a little bit later into these games, but also we have a really good game log, especially head to head, but also over his last 20. Now the next thing is actually seeing how does this lineup perform versus pitchers similar to this starting pitcher, which is Aaron Nola. And you actually can do that when you scroll down. You can look at Pittsburgh's batting versus right-handed pitching, which Aaron Nola is. And you can see here the 2026 season, they are a top 3 team all across the board. That is average, on-base percentage, on-base plus slugging, batting average for balls in play, and then weighted runs created, which is probably the most slept on statistic in all of the MLB, and they are the 2nd best in all of the MLB. Now, you don't only have their full 2026 rankings, you also have the last 30, which is very important because this is obviously the most recent performance of this team. And again, across the board, they are still a top 3 team, meaning that Aaron Nola is likely to have his hands full again in this game. game. Now, when you look at Aaron Nola's statistics, this is all based off of percentile rankings, not just a top 100. K percentage, yes, he's still a very good K percentage pitcher, which is a good sign for us because in order for a pitcher to get a strikeout, that's likely going to be about 4 to 5 pitches that he's going to throw for every single batter, meaning that his pitch count is likely to increase for all of these hitters. However, when you look at his whip, which is walks plus hits per innings pitched, it is 1.45. The league average is 1.25 to 1.3. That means that he is a very poor pitcher for walks plus hits per innings pitched, meaning that he is going to work really high into a lot of these counts. Now, when you look across the rest of the board, again, very low percentile, bottom 13% for batting average allowed, bottom 9, bottom 24 for these other two statistical categories. So again, this looks like a very strong play for the under because not only, again, is this a very tough offense, but he hasn't been necessarily doing well in any pitching regard other than really strikeouts, which again benefits us because strikeouts tend to lead to higher pitch counts, meaning that this play has now passed the third check, which is just analyzing the opposing lineup. And again, Aaron Nola has struggled versus this Pittsburgh team in the past earlier this year. Now, the last and final check that I actually look at here, which can honestly make or break a ton of plays, is the bullpen stats. And you might be thinking, why do the bullpen stats matter if I'm only betting on the starting pitcher for this game? And that's a valid question, but what tends to happen is if this team is coming off of a bad game where they had to use a ton of relief pitchers or even a really tough series where they were really reliever dependent, then managers will tend to lean a lot heavier on their starting pitchers to work deeper into games. Meaning that if you bet the under on a play, but managers are looking to extend the starting pitcher a lot further than they typically do, you could really be missing out on a lot of opportunities. So with that in mind, when I look at this Philadelphia bullpen, because that is who Aaron Nola plays for, you can see here that yes, there are some pitchers which the pitch count last 3 and pitch count last 5, and then the rest are obviously the most important things. So this pitcher for the last 3 games has had 70 pitches, but he's now had 1 day of rest, meaning he is likely to come into this game. Same thing with this pitcher's had 26 pitches in his last 3, but also coming off of 1 day of rest. So there are other pitchers like this one here who's had 38 pitches, but no days of rest. That likely means that this pitcher is likely not to walk into this game. So just by doing a quick glance at this, yes, there are some really high numbers such as this guy, but again, coming off of a day of rest. So because of this, I think that this bullpen is going to have plenty of rest walking into this matchup and expecting to come in if Nola ever does struggle at any point throughout this game. So don't expect him to work deep into this game because his bullpen needs him to. Meaning that this play has now passed the last and final check, which is looking at the bullpen stat. Now, a bonus check that I always recommend before you ever place a bet is actually looking at line movement and then line shopping your play. Now, the first thing we'll look at is actually the line movement, and you can do that here by clicking this button and seeing exactly how this market is reacting to this single player prop. And what I recommend looking at when I'm looking at player props are actually Novig, DraftKings, and FanDuel. Now, there's only Novig and DraftKings. I don't see FanDuel on this play, but what I want to see is whatever play I'm taking, I want this chart to be trending down, meaning that the book is feeling more confident, whether that be the over or the under. This odd is getting more negative, right? So that's exactly what I want to see. Novig is trending down, and so is DraftKings. These are really good signs for me to be seeing in this line movement chart, meaning that the last thing that I need to do is just click this drop down arrow and seeing what is the best price I can get in all of the market. And it says here that the best price that I can get is actually on Hard Rock Bet. So all I would need to do is click this button. It would take me directly to Hard Rock Bet. I personally cannot bet on this sports book because I don't live in a state that allows me to bet on Hard Rock Bets. But if you had, then I would absolutely bet that. But for me, I would have to bet on Novig at -120. But again, we had a really good chart moving down. That's all really good signs for me. So with all of that said, betting on the pitcher recorded outs market should be made super simple with just those 4 checks. Start by filtering out the pitchers with the highest hit rate, whether that be for the last 5, last 10, last 20, or even the full 2026 season. And then from there, look at their pitcher's efficiency by looking at how many pitches are they actually expected to throw in this game by comparing that to their season average. And then you want to go look at the opposing lineup to see if it's a perfect match for this game. And last but certainly not least is doing a quick glance over those bullpen stats to make sure that at least some of those relief pitchers have had some sort of rest over their last couple of games. Anyways, if you have any questions about this process, be sure to drop those down in the comments below because again, here at Outlier, our main goal is to help y'all become profitable sports bettors. Let me know what video y'all want to see next, and I will be working on that here in the near future. Anyways, best of luck betting out there, and I will see y'all in the next one.